reflux disease, esophagitis, complications of esophagitis, Barrett's esophagus. So I'm sorry for one thing in anticipation that my hardware just gave up at the very 11th hour, so I have to download the presentation right over here a few minutes back. But I mean, the topic is the same. So these are the things which we have to cover as far as the gastroesophageal reflux disease is concerned, which is the definition of GERD, epidemiology of GERD, pathophysiology of GERD, clinical manifestations, diagnostic evaluation, treatment, and complications. So इसको जरा सा एक्सक्यूज मी बेटा, इसको जरा सा आगे कर सकते हो? नहीं मेरा है, इसको जरा सा स्मॉल, ओके, हाँ, ओके, okay, okay, okay. Sorry, this is the first time we are doing the lectures this way, so there will be a bit of hurdles. So this is the basic diagram in which you can see the esophagus, which is the food pipe, and it enters the stomach, and these two crusts which you are seeing right now, they are the crusts of the diaphragm. And at the same time, at the same place where these crusts of the diaphragms are, these are lower esophageal sphincters are there. And the reason behind these and the philosophy of these lower esophageal sphincters lying at the same place where the crust of the diaphragms meet with each other, because when there is increased intrathoracic pressure, intra-abdominal pressure, and there is an abrupt increase in the intra-abdominal pressure, this increased pressure is transmitted to the lower esophageal sphincter, and it works as a one-way physiological valve. So it prevents the gastric contents to outflow from the stomach in the food pipe, which is the esophagus. Now, if you see, like if the lower esophageal sphincter is open, it allows the reflex content to go in the food pipe. So gastroesophageal reflux disease, basically it can be physiological and it can be pathological. Physiological GERD, which we see in postprandial, young males who are in a habit of eating outside large volumes of food along with fizzy drinks, they must be aware of this phenomenon. But it is usually short-lived. Overnight it is there and then it is gone. It is usually asymptomatic, or at most a bit of uneasiness or chest burning, but there are no nocturnal symptoms. In cases of the pathological GERD, the difference is there. It is usually symptomatic, and the symptoms are very varied, which we are going to cover down the lecture. And then there is mucosal injury, which is usually not seen in case of physiological GERD, and then the nocturnal symptoms are always there. So this is the epidemiology. It occurs in all ages, but most common in those who are more than 40 years of age. About 20% of the people in the Western countries suffer from GERD symptoms on weekly basis. About 7% has symptoms which are on daily basis. This is quite huge of a number, 7% of the population who are suffering from these symptoms on daily basis. Except for NERD, which stands for non-esophageal reflux disease and pregnancy, no much difference in incidence between men and women. But for the Barrett's esophagus, the prevalence is more in males, particularly the white adult males. So the pathophysiology, if you recall the diagram, if there is decreased lower esophageal sphincter pressure, it is primary barrier to gastroesophageal reflux. The primary barrier to gastroesophageal reflux is the lower esophageal sphincter, and it normally works in conjunction with the diaphragm. If the barrier is disrupted, the acid goes from stomach to the esophagus, maybe due to spontaneous transient ileus relaxations, or transient increase in intra-abdominal pressure, which I have already told, or in certain conditions which are pathological, in which we have got an atonic lower esophageal sphincter. So there are certain factors which affect the lower esophageal sphincter tone, and there are certain drugs that reduce the lower esophageal sphincter tone, includes calcium channel antagonist, nifedipine, verapamil, diltiazem, nitrates, anticholinergics, oral contraceptives, and estrogen. So there are a whole array of medications which are usually in
सर
excuse me.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम
वालेकुम
सर
सलाम.
चलो सर लेक्चर आपका चल रहा है सर कंटिन्यू चल रहा है आपका
जी लेक्चर चल रहा है अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह.
ठीक है क्योंकि सर जूम अभी बंद हो गया था इस वजह से ना
अब मैं क्या करूं, मैं वापस पलटूं?
नहीं 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 आप बस कंटिन्यू कर रहे हैं आप इंशाल्लाह
ओके जी. Foods that reduce LES tone include chocolates, fatty foods, onions, peppermint, and garlic. So you can well understand why do you have some acid brush after a hot chocolate drink late in the night. Smoking reduces the LES tone, so it's better to avoid smoking for various reasons. Okay, so disruption of the anatomical barriers. It is associated with the hiatal hernia. We are going to cover that in a short while. The size of the hiatal hernia is proportional to the frequency of LES relaxation. And hypotensive LES pressures and large hiatal hernia, more chances of GERD following abrupt increase in the intra-abdominal pressure. Esophageal clearance, it plays a pivotal role. The GI acid produced spend too much time in contact with the esophageal mucosa. Normally, when we swallow, the swallowing contributes to esophageal clearance by increasing the salivary flow. However, the saliva production decreases with the age, so more often seen with the elderly. Then the mucosal resistance. The mucus secreted by the mucus secreting glands involves the protection. I'm sorry that there was some problem with the internet connections over here. This is the first time I am giving this lecture, but no problem. Factors affecting the LES tone. So there are certain drugs that reduce the LES tone, which include calcium channel antagonists, verapamil, diltiazem, which are being used still as of today in wide variety of people's, nitrates, anticholinergic drugs, and oral contraceptives and estrogens. And there are certain foods that reduces the LES tone, which include chocolate, fatty foods, onions, peppermint, and garlic. And then last but not the least is smoking. It reduces the LES tone. Okay, so the other thing which contributes to GERD is the disruption of the anatomical barriers. And the disruption of the anatomical barrier is usually associated with the hiatal hernia. And the size of the hiatal hernia is directly proportional to the frequency of LES relaxation. There are certain conditions in which the hypotensive LES pressure and the large hiatal hernia, more chances of GERD following abrupt increase in the intra-abdominal pressure. Now, esophageal clearance, it plays a pivotal role in decreasing the frequency of GERD. The GI acid produced spends too much time in contact with the esophageal mucosa, results in the symptoms of GERD. Normally, when we swallow, the swallowing contributes to esophageal clearance by increasing the salivary flow. However, as we know that the saliva decreases with the increasing age, so more often we see this type of symptoms in the elderly. Then there is mucosal resistance for GERD as well. The mucosa secreted by the mucus secreting glands involves in the protection of esophagus. The bicarbonate moving from the blood to the lumen can neutralize acidic refluxate in the esophagus. On repeated exposure to refluxate or due to some defects in normal mucosal defenses, hydrogen ions increase and diffuse into mucosa, leading to cellular acidification and necrosis, leading to esophagitis. Last but not the least is the delayed gastric emptying. Increase in the gastric volume may increase both the frequency of reflux and the amount of gastric acid which available to be refluxed. And the physiological postprandial GERD occurs. Okay, so this is a cartoon which is going to show you the pathophysiology of GERD, which we have already discussed. Impaired mucosal clearance, impaired salivary function, hiatal hernia, impaired esophageal mucosal defenses, transient inappropriate relaxation of the ileus, gastric contents, pepsin secretion, reduced resting pressure of the ileus, delayed gastric emptying, and last but not the least is the pyloric incompetence or the duodenogastric reflux. So if you concentrate, around 90% of the reasons for which the GERD happens usually lies at the level of lower esophageal sphincter. And these are the complications. This is an endoscopic view. This is the erosive gastroesophagitis, which is responsible for around 40 to 60% of the GERD symptoms. And severity of the symptoms often fail to match the severity of the esophagitis. Now, I need you to concentrate on this diagram. On the left side of the panel, you can see a relatively normal esophagus in which you see this black arrow. It's showing the Z line. The Z line is the area where the mucosa or the esophagus, it meets with the mucosa of the stomach, with the gastric mucosa. So you can see the Salmon mucosa down beneath, which is the gastric mucosa, and the Mickesh mucosa, which is the esophageal mucosa. And this is the Z line. This is the histologic gastroesophageal junction. Okay. And when you see there is this concentration over here, this is the point where the crust of the diaphragm, they are outside and they are putting a pressure. So this is the lower esophageal sphincter. This whole contributes to the lower esophageal sphincter. When this becomes incompetent, what you can see is over the right side, and you can see that there is inflammation over here. Whereas there is Barrett's esophagus or not, we cannot comment upon this picture, because for the Barrett's esophagus, the prerequisite that there should not be any distal esophagitis. So when this refluxate or this reflux happens for longer period of time, the result is this, which is the esophageal stricture. It is the result of healing of erosive esophagitis, and usually the patient presents to you with dysphagia. Now we are going to cover the alarm symptoms later in the lecture, which may need dilatation, common in the distal esophagus, and usually they are 1 to 2 centimeters in length, but they can be longer as well. Another complication which is very important is the Barrett's esophagus. And this is the old picture which you just saw. And on the right side, you can see that this Salmon mucosa, it is projecting in the esophageal mucosa in the forms of column. You can see there is one column over here, there's one column over here, and there's a newly developing column over here, and there is a bit column formation over here as well. So what is Barrett's esophagus? It is the columnar metaplasia of the esophagus. That is the replacement of the squamous epithelial lining of the esophagus by specialized columnar type epithelium. And it is associated with the development of adenocarcinoma. And they have got a greater chance of developing esophageal stricture. I'm sorry. Okay, so it continues on. So this is the normal esophagus. The upper right panel, you can see the normal esophagus. And when there is persistent reflux, you can see that there is distal esophagitis. When this distal esophagitis, it goes unchecked, untreated, unnoticed, it results in Barrett's esophagus, which is a pre-malignant condition. If you don't stop the condition over here through the pharmacologic, non-pharmacologic treatment, it ultimately leads to esophageal cancer. So in Barrett's esophagus, the acid damages lining the esophagus and causes chronic esophagitis, and what we have already told. Okay, so coming to the clinical manifestations. The clinical manifestations of GERD, they are varied. And basically, there are 3 classes of symptoms. The typical symptoms may be aggravated, that worsens gastroesophageal reflux, such as recumbent position, bending over, or eating a meal high in fat, heartburn, regurgitation, water brush, and belching. So, I mean, these are pretty common symptoms, and some of you might have encountered these symptoms in the recent years as well. Then comes the atypical symptoms. These are the atypical symptoms who people usually, in physicians, don't consider them as of gastroesophageal reflux disease, but they are because of gastroesophageal reflux disease. And these are extraesophageal symptoms. So they are non-allergic asthma, which is nocturnal asthma, hoarseness of voice, recurrent pharyngitis, chest pains, dental erosions, dental caries, pharyngitis, laryngitis. These are all symptoms. They can be symptoms of gastroesophageal reflux disease. But if you have got these symptoms, these are the alarm symptoms. If they are there, then the patient needs to be thoroughly investigated. And they may be indicative of complication of GERD, such as Barrett's esophagus, esophageal stricture, or esophageal cancer, dysphagia. Now, in my private practice, in my gastroenterology practice, dysphagia, if anyone is coming to me with symptoms of dysphagia, I elaborate dysphagia, whether this is, now there are certain questions which you should ask to a patient who presents to you with dysphagia. First symptom is that is it a liquid dysphagia or it is a solid dysphagia? A. Then it is in which part of esophagus you have got the dysphagia, upper esophagus, mid esophagus, lower esophagus. Is it progressive, non-progressive? It is only for liquids. Is it only for solids? Is it associated with any weight loss or not? So dysphagia is not going to escape me without proper investigations, which include a CBC, a barium swallow, and endoscopy ultimately. So dysphagia is something that if you encounter somebody with dysphagia, elaborate the dysphagia. And if there is dysphagia along with one other symptom like weight loss or iron deficiency anemia, please do not let the patient go away just on pharmacologic treatment. Investigate the patient through barium swallow or endoscopy. Early satiety, GI bleeding, odynophagia. Difference between dysphagia and odynophagia: dysphagia is difficulty in swallowing, odynophagia is painful swallowing. Vomiting, unexplained weight loss, iron deficiency anemia, choking, and continual pain. So, if the classical typical symptoms like heartburn and regurgitation exist, in the absence of alarm symptoms, the diagnosis of GERD can be made clinically and treatment can be initiated. So, if one diagnostic test, that's if a patient presents to you with classical symptoms of gastroesophageal reflux disease, you start the patient on proton pump inhibitors. Previously, we used to start H2 receptor antagonist as well, but now the proton pump inhibitors. And the symptoms, they resolve within 4 to 6 weeks. This is the diagnostic test that this patient had this gastroesophageal reflux disease. But the prerequisite is that there should not be any alarm symptoms. Trial of medications, these are basically the H2 receptor antagonist or the proton pump inhibitors. Expect response in around 2 to 4 weeks. Now, this response we are talking about is 100% response. 2 to 4 weeks, the patient should be to the extent that he would be questioning the use of medications. If no response, change to PPI, maximize the dose of PPI. If there is the PPI response is inadequate despite maximal dosage, confirm the diagnosis. This is through the 24-hour pH monitoring or the endoscopy. I would suggest endoscopy. Okay, so this is the endoscopy. In patients with alarm symptoms or signs, those who fear a medication trial, those who require long-term treatment, important distinguishing between esophagitis and Barrett's mesoplasia. Absence of endoscopic features of GERD, it does not exclude a diagnosis of GERD. Confirmation can be achieved by provocation tests such as acid perfusion test, but usually now I think it's obsolete, or it is only for educational purposes or research purposes. I haven't heard of this test for years and years now. pH monitoring is still in the business. It is in the business. For difficult cases, yes, it is still in the business. 24-hour pH monitoring. What you do, you place in a catheter and you leave the catheter, secure the catheter around 4 centimeters above the lower esophageal sphincter, and then you let the patient go away. And there is a electronic transducer attached to that catheter. And then 24 hours after the attachment, the patient comes back to you, and that transducer has got different buttons, that when the patient is lying, he has to press the button that he is lying. When the patient is eating, he has to press the button that he is eating. And after 24 hours, you take out the catheter, you take back the device, and then you read the device. If there is pH less than 4 for around more than 15 to 30% of time, it signifies that the patient has got gastroesophageal reflux disease. So 24-hour pH monitoring helps in establishing the presence of acid above the LES as the cause of symptoms of esophageal damage. Documents the amount of time the esophageal pH is low. Useful in patients who have not responded or who have had an incomplete response to empiric therapy, have symptoms without evidence of mucosal injury, or have atypical symptoms. So I've already told you how this test is being done. Okay, so this is the algorithm of treatment. This is a very good algorithm. The patients with heartburn, and you initiate the treatment with PPI or H2 receptor antagonist. But again, remember that the patient should not have any alarm symptoms. So if you look at the left side of the panel, if the patient has got good response, yes, continue the treatment. And if there are no frequent relapses, then after 2 or 4 weeks, you continue to on-demand treatment. This is the algorithm which I follow. Okay. And if the patient has got good response, you can switch from H2 receptor antagonist to PPI. And if good response, maintains therapy to lowest effective therapy. If the symptoms they persist or the patient develops alarm symptoms, consider endoscopy. If there is no response with the PPI, increase to the maximum dose. Now, this is an old slide. Initially, what was advocated that the twice a day PPI is more effective than the once a day PPI. Now there are certain papers, and it has been established the single dose PPI, proton pump inhibitors, they are as effective as twice a dose PPI. So in all, if the symptoms they don't go away, or the diagnosis is in question, or you have got alarm symptoms, please refer for endoscopy. So what are the goals of treatment? Alleviate or eliminate the patient's symptoms, decrease the frequency or recurrence and duration of gastroesophageal reflux disease, promote healing of the injured mucosa, prevent the development of complications. So these are the goals of treatment. First and the foremost is the lifestyle modification. This is the cornerstone of therapy. Avoid large meals. Avoid acidic food which are citrus. Citrus, it contains the acetic acid. Alcohol, caffeine, chocolate, onions, garlic, and peppermint. These foods, they have been shown to increase the frequency of GERD. Decrease the fat intake. Avoid lying down within 3 or 4 hours after a meal. Elevate head of bed by 4 to 8 inches. Avoid meds that may potentiate GERD, for example, calcium channel blockers, alpha antagonists, tricyclic antidepressants, nitrates, sedatives. Avoid clothing that is tight around the waist, lose weight, and stop smoking. So all in all, these indicate that you should opt for a healthy lifestyle. This is the initial treatment, which is the OTC, over the counter antacids. Over the counter acid suppressant antacid, which is an appropriate initial therapy. And usually patients, they usually have exhausted these options before coming to you. Approximately 1/3 of the patients with heartburn related symptoms use at least twice weekly, more effective than placebo in relieving their GERD symptoms. Then treatment is through the H2 receptor antagonist. Previously, we used to have a lot of Zantac, but then after the FDA raised some red flags about the potential carcinogenic effect of Zantac, it has been stopped. And we have switched our practice to PPI now. So you can see esomeprazole, omeprazole, lansoprazole, pantoprazole, rabeprazole. Now these are all 3, 4, or 5 different types of PPI. These are second, third, and fourth generation of PPI. Initially, we used to have omeprazole, then come lansoprazole, then pantoprazole and esomeprazole, and lastly, rabeprazole. The rabeprazole gained its popularity because there were initially few trials which showed that rabeprazole is the only PPI or out of these which is safe in pregnancy. But later, further trials with substantial number of patient population showed that all of these agents, they are pregnancy safe. So if you have exhausted the lifestyle modification, you have exhausted the medication, and the patient is totally compliant as far as the lifestyle modification is concerned, he has lost few weight, he has lost a couple of pounds, he is compliant with his medications, and even then he has got symptoms which are on daily basis or on regular basis and they are bothering him a lot, or there is a risk of developing Barrett's esophagus, then you can consider the patient for anti-reflux surgery. And failed medical management, patient's preference, GERD complications, and medical complications which are attributable to large hiatal hernia. Now, remember that an anti-reflux surgery, it does not ensure that the patient would be 100% free from GERD symptoms. This should be the take-home message, that the patient, there is a high likely possibility that the patient would be free from the GERD symptoms for most of the time, but the symptoms, they are not going to go away. It cannot be guaranteed that the patient would be 100% symptom free in 100% of the patient's population. This should be made clear very early in the conversation. So, but there are complications. I have already told you 10% have solid food dysphagia, 2 to 3% have permanent symptoms, 7 to 10% have gas, bloating, diarrhea, nausea, early satiety. Within 3 to 5 years, 50% of the patients back on anti-reflux medication. So this is the KVA, but it is still being used and it is very useful. Endoscopic treatment for GERD or for hiatal hernia, it is relatively new. There is no definite indication. And 3 categories, which is the RFA, radiofrequency application to increase the LES reflux barrier, endoscopic sewing devices, injection of a non-resorbable polymer into the LES area. The most widely accepted is the RFA, but RFA role is more in cases of Barrett's esophagus, not in the cases of just decreased lower esophageal sphincter pressure. Sewing devices are being used. There is another which is called the clipping device, and the clipping device is now more and more being used. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry, this was the first time we are taking this lecture, and there have been some problems with the transmission. There have been some problem. I bought a lecture, but the problem is that my laptop just it just broke at the 11th hour. I'm sorry for that, but so my name is Dr. Tayyib Osmani. If you have got any questions when you are back, you can talk to me, and you can ask me any questions. Stay home, stay safe, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
सर लेक्चर आपका एंड हो गया? हेलो
जी
सर, लेक्चर आपका एंड हो गया?
जी
ठीक है सर। एनी क्वेश्चन सर जो स्टूडेंट आपसे पूछे उनका रिप्लाई कर दें, फिर मैं बंद कर देता हूँ यहाँ से।
जी पूछें।
चैट रूम पे अगर कोई स्टूडेंट आपसे पूछ रहे हैं तो आप रिप्लाई कर दें क्वेश्चन का आंसर का।
मेरे पास तो हाँ, एक सेकंड, सॉरी। ओके,
कोई नहीं है।
नहीं है, कुछ क्वेश्चन तो हैं। ओके, अब ये तो सबके मैसेज आंसर करने वाली तो बहुत लंबी है तो लिस्ट है। अच्छा चलो एक सेकंड, लेट मी सी। You guys is still
सर
there?
अभी
Or
10 मिनट है,
you guys are
10 मिनट
listening to
बाद
me?
भी आप जितना दे दें।
Listening to me? Okay, sir. There are certain questions over here. I'm sorry, I'm not aware for to this mode of training, but this fun question that wow, suddenly join this meeting. Great. Okay, fine. Muhammad Hamad, why there is delayed guesting emptying? Okay, so this question is from Mr. Muhammad Hamad, why there is delayed guesting emptying. Hamad, there are certain medical conditions which raise to delayed gastric emptying, which include diabetes mellitus, hypothyroidism, connective tissue disorders, increasing age, gastric outlet obstruction, which can lead to delayed gastric emptying. Okay. Then Laiba Masroor, is encephalopathy also a complication of GERD? No. Then Zainullah, is it obstructive or oropharyngeal? um, thanks. Why there is gastric emptying? तो ये why, अभी हमाद मैंने आपको आंसर तो किया, दोबारा आ गया क्वेश्चन, why there is Hamad, if your answer is, if you are satisfied with the answer, please type. If you are not, please let me know, तो मैं और इसको elaborate करूँ. I said gastric emptying is delayed in cases of certain medical conditions, for example diabetes mellitus, hypothyroidism, gastric outlet obstruction in advancing age. So gastric emptying जो delayed होती है, इसको हम categorize कर सकते हैं मुख्तलिफ reasons से. Okay, Husna to everyone, isn't abdominal pain the symptom? No, abdominal pain. By and large, dyspepsia is not a symptom of GERD. When there is, usually patient do not present to us with dyspepsia when they have got GERD, but they can, but no, I don't think so. Any other question? I'm happy we have got like 10 minutes over here. So if somebody have got any questions you want to ask, please do type. Symptoms. What symptoms? Is GI bleeding in GERD? GI bleeding is an alarm symptom in GERD. If you have got GI bleed per se, upper GI bleed usually doesn't happen in GERD unless it is a Mallory Weiss tear. So no, GI bleeding is not a cardinal symptom of GERD. It can be, but it would be very orthodox. Or questions, please? Please do ask. Mean it is complication. Zanullah, I told you it can be a complication, but I mean, no. Complication when the complication has gone too far, तो फिर शायद हो जाए थोड़ी सी, but directly if you ask me that GI bleed is a complication of GERD, the answer would be no. Okay, Navera shape to everyone, compression by crural diaphragm, it keeps the LES closed. Right, yes, it forms a ring-like structure. Then again, treatment of what? GERD, I've already told. Is Z line normally present in esophageal mucosa? Yes, I've already told you the Z line, the line where the salmon mucosa it catches with the gastric mucosa, the esophageal mucosa, that is called the Z line. It is present. It presents in everyone. How non-allergic asthma is associated with GERD? Okay, Yuxal Fatna. When there is acidic reflux, it in the nocturnally the acid goes up and then it enters the larynx. It irritates the larynx and it results in asthma. So non-allergic asthma, nocturnal asthma, GERD is known to cause non-allergic or nocturnal asthma. It has been clearly mentioned. How to treat metaplasia or to overcome with metaplasia? Very good question, Zainullah. So metaplasia is something, there could be a whole presentation with on Barrett's esophagus, but you can treat the metaplasia by certain ways. A, increase, it depends upon the degree of metaplasia, low grade metaplasia, high grade metaplasia, indiscriminate metaplasia. The question is very huge, but you can increase the PPI. There is endoscopic treatment which is called the RFA, and then there is the treatment which is called the EMR, endoscopic mucosal resection. You can take out the whole chunk of that mucosa, and if there is high grade metaplasia, the patient needs to go for surgery. So hope that answers the question. Okay, what is the treatment strategy for Barrett's? ये तो मैंने आपको बता दिया. और कोई पूछ लो भाई, अभी है हमारे पास 8 मिनट है, पूछ लो. अच्छा, हम चूंकि हैं बैरेट्स एसोफेगस, मोहम्मद हमाद बेटा पढ़ाया तो है. एसोफेजाइटिस क्या हो गया भाई? अभी तो पढ़ा के फारिग हूँ. बैरेट्स एसोफेगस एसोफेजाइटिस अभी तो पढ़ा के फारिग हूँ बच्चे. पीछे स्लाइड में जाके देख लेते हैं. वो जो तुम आना, तुम लोग मुझसे आके प्रेजेंटेशन ले लेना. मेरे पास प्रेजेंटेशन पड़ी हुई है पूरी, मैं तुम्हें दे दूंगा. अच्छा, अभी यहाँ पे सवाल आ रहे हैं बैरेट्स एसोफेगस के. मैं थोड़ा सा बता दूं. बैरेट्स एसोफेगस में मैं आपको बताऊं, यू डू द एंडोस्कोपी, and when you do the endoscopy you have to rule out there is no esophagitis first. अगर esophagitis है, you take out your scope, intensify the PPI therapy. PPI therapy दी 2 to 4 weeks. उसके बाद हमने जाके देखा वहां पे अगर Barrett's esophagus है, we take the biopsies. Now in the most pivotal role in diagnosing the Barrett's esophagus is to see where is there any dysplasia or not. Now dysplasia is categorized low grade dysplasia, high grade dysplasia, esophageal adenocarcinoma और indiscriminate dysplasia. अगर low grade dysplasia है, you can intensify the PPI therapy. अगर high grade dysplasia है, then you have to go for either endoscopic therapy or surgical therapy. अगर तो आप endoscopic therapy कर लेते हैं, say for example उसको रेडियो फ्रीक्वेंसी एब्लेशन कर देते हैं या EMR कर देते हैं, विच इज एंडोस्कोपिक म्यूकोजल रिसेक्शन, और वहां पे मार्जिन्स क्लियर आ जाती हैं, देन तो सर्जरी का रोल नहीं है. लेकिन अगर ये इससे डिस्प्लेजिया खत्म नहीं होता, इफ यू डू द EMR, यू टेक आउट दैट चंक ऑफ द म्यूकोजा एंड द बायोप्सी सेज दैट देयर इज malignant tissue or there is dysplasia in the deeper cell lines, you go for surgery. So I hope that answers the question. So the dysplasia can be reversed by PPI. Dysplasia cannot be reversed by PPI. Low grade dysplasia के ऊपर तो हम कह सकते हैं, but high grade dysplasia के ऊपर no, you cannot reverse the dysplasia with the PPI. मैं यही बता रहा हूँ आपको कि dysplasia it's an entirely different ball game. Just to give you a clue कि low grade dysplasia, high grade dysplasia, the biopsy needs to be read by 2 histopathologists who have got expertise in reading the esophageal biopsies. So I mean this can underline कि कितना problematic होता है. और कोई क्वेश्चन है तो पूछो. Esophagectomy in high grades dysplasia complication. Yes, esophagectomy you have to consider erosive esophagitis. Erosive esophagitis कौन सा? एरोसिव कह रही, कोरोसिव कहना चाह रहे? एरोसिव एसोफेजाइटिस तो यही होता है जिसको हम डिस्टल एसोफेजाइटिस कह चुके हैं हम. एसोफेजेक्टमी, यस, यू गो फॉर एसोफेजेक्टमी इन हाई ग्रेड डिस्प्लेजिया. अब ये आगे कॉम्प्लिकेशंस लिखा है, इसका क्या मतलब है ये मुझे नहीं पता कि जैनुल्लाह ये क्या लिखना चाह रहे हैं. ये माशाल्लाह तुम लोग 5-6 ही सवाल पूछने वाले हो, बाकी तो सब लगता है मेरे ख्याल में शायद लगा के कहीं खेलने वेलने चले गए हैं. GI GERD पर्टिकुलर ट्रीटमेंट अभी तो बताइए. लाइफ स्टाइल मॉडिफिकेशंस, PPI एंड लास्ट बट सर्जिकल ट्रीटमेंट, ये बता चुका हूं बेटा. थ्री होती हैं प्रेम सिंह. लाइफ स्टाइल मॉडिफिकेशन, फार्माकोलॉजिक थेरेपी, सर्जिकल थेरेपी, एंडोस्कोपिक थेरेपी. Are tumors of esophagus a complication of GERD? Not all tumors, only esophageal distal tumors which are esophageal adenocarcinoma, बाकी नहीं होते. Barrett's esophagus क्या हो गया है भाई? Barrett's esophagus अभी तो बता चुका है, इतना थक गया गला बोल बोल के यार. यार मुझे कॉल कलेक्ट करनी है, मैं कॉल कलेक्ट कर रहा हूँ, तो डिसरिगार्ड करना है। हाँ, अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी।
ओके सर।